legend of the Star Heroes. Chosen by the World Legacy. In a world ruled by the Mekk-Knights and enforced by the Crawlers, mankind is forced into hiding for survival. The remnants of humanity live in a village in the Forest of the Stars, protected by a barrier that wards off mechanical invaders. Ib is the bearer of the ritual wand that maintains this barrier, and despite its strength, the mounting Crawler menace threatens to shatter the barrier and overrun the village. To attempt to lighten the burden of maintaining the barrier, her brother Ningirsu and childhood friend Aurum patrol the forest, hoping to at least slay a Crawler despite their meager strength. One day, Ib hears a voice beckoning her out into the wilderness, and Aurum and Ningirsu, accompanied by baby dragon Imduk, escort her into the forest to investigate. Guided by the mysterious voice, the trio discover a mysterious overgrown structure. As they approached, Ib's wand responded to the building, activating it and engulfing the surroundings in a blinding light. They are introduced to Lee, the World Chalice Fairy, who had been sealed within the World Chalice, awaiting for a group of heroes to arrive for her to guide. Her mission is to save the world from the Great Darkness, but she was obstructed by the efforts of the Mekk-Knights. The group accepts Lee's guidance and awakens to new powers as world heroes. With Lee's guidance, the world heroes begin venturing out across the world, making short work of the Crawlers they encounter. They are told to seek out the other 6 world legacies and activate them, as the combined might of the 7 world legacies will give them the strength to not only defeat the Crawlers, but also potentially end the Mekk-Knights' fearsome reign. The world heroes set off in search of the next world legacy, venturing into new lands they had never seen before. Their next destination is a swamp where the world armor rests. But they are not alone, as countless Crawlers also inhabit the hollows of the armor. The world heroes are overrun by the endless swarms of Crawlers and are forced to put up a last stand when their means of retreat are cut off. Lee tells them that the X-Crawler commands the Crawler armies, and they focus their attempts on taking it down. With the X-Crawler shut down, the Crawler army collapses, motionless. But before the heroes can celebrate, they are greeted by the 7 Mekk-Knights, who reach out and abduct Ib, who had been exhausted from the battle. Lee cautions that Ib's wand is the key to activating the other world legacies and should not fall into the wrong hands, and urges the heroes to rescue Ib. Gift of the Martyr. Ib is held captive by the Mekk-Knights, her wand confiscated and sealed in the core of Mekk-Knight Blue Sky. However, aside from taking away the wand, the Mekk-Knights did not lay a hand on Ib. She wonders if the Mekk-Knights were truly evil as they first thought. Meanwhile, the rest of the world heroes followed the Mekk-Knights to their base, situated within the ruins of a forgotten civilization, flanked by the World Lance and the already active World Shield. However, before they could approach the shield, they are ambushed by the Mekk-Knights and fight with all their might, driven by the desire to rescue Ib. The Mekk-Knights respond by fusing into their strongest form, Mekk-Knight Spectrum Supreme. As the battle rages on, the force of Ningirsu's and Spectrum Supreme's attacks colliding blows open a hole in the Mekk-Knight base. Ningirsu signals to Lee to infiltrate the Mekk-Knight's base to find Ib. As Lee reunites with Ib calls out to her and suggests that there should be no reason to continue fighting the Mekk-Knights and proposes they halt the battle. Lee reveals her true nature, and a shadow engulfs the both of them. An explosion at the Mekk-Knight base is heard, and all combatants briefly stop fighting to assess the commotion. Ib had broken out, but her body had been taken over by Lee, becoming Nightmare Corruptor Ibli. Ibli deprives the heroes of their powers and threatens to take their lives, only for the Mekk-Knights to step in and take the brunt of the blow. Spectrum is split apart, and Ibli begins extracting the Mekk-Knight's corpse. In a moment of desperation and compassion, Blue Sky bestows its core and the ritual wands to Aurum, merging with him to form Mekh-Knight Avram. With the power of the key split between Avram and Ib, Ibli makes a beeline for the World Lance to activate it before Avram can. However, Avram's pursuit is halted by the Nightmares, formed from the cores of the Mekh-Knights. Ningirsu, despite his lack of power, bravely steps in to hold off the Nightmares, instantly destroying Nightmare Mermaid and drawing the attention of all the other beasts. Avram reaches the base of the World Lance but is too late to stop Ibli from activating it. With the lance, Ibli trances Avram and collects his swords that holds his half of the ritual key. Before she can kill off Avram, Imduk intervenes and briefly breaks Li's influence on Ib. To prevent Li from taking over again, Ib thrusts Avram's sword into her own body despite Avram's protests. Ningirsu arrives only to be greeted with the tragic sight of Avram cradling Ib's dying body. The secret powers of the planets. A few years have passed after Ib sacrificed herself to stop Li, and the memory of that moment still haunts Aurum. Having also lost contact with Ningirsu since that day, Aurum continues journeying the world with Imduk in search of his missing friend. Stumbling across a dormant crawler, Aurum attempts tapping into it, hoping that it may yield a clue that leads him to Ningirsu. Accessing the crawler opened Aurum up to its systems, showing him maps where crawlers still roam active. Armed with this new clue, Aurum and Imduk set off towards uncharted lands in search of Ningirsu. His journey is arduous, but brings him into contact with other tribes across the world: the fiery recluses, the stalwart beasts, and lakeside trees. By bringing the tribes and their folklore together, Aurum unlocks their hidden potential, akin to the world's chalice powers that were once bestowed upon him. There once was a god that ruled the skies, using dragonkind to maintain the balance of the realms through the cycle of destruction and rebirth. However, with each iteration of the cycle, more and more destruction was wrought, and thus the gods decided to descend to the earth and encase the everlasting destructive forces in the planet's core. The powers of creation and destruction raged within the planet, but were successfully contained, and a trickle of creation was allowed to leak to the surface to let life flourish. The gods turned the last of its power into a key, bestowing it as a focus of its own power, through which civilization on the planet's surface would combat the forces of destruction. As time passed, humanity began to populate the world, and their scientific knowledge and technological know-how brought themselves prosperity. Their advancements had adverse effects on the environment, however, which weakened the dragons that protect the planet. When humankind excavated the key, Li, a leading scientist in that world, spearheaded research on it. The organization studying the key, named Crusadia, used the knowledge obtained from the key to develop the Mekh-Knights, mechanical defenders of the planet. Li, however, was fascinated by the legend surrounding the key, and sought to use it to draw out the great darkness from within the planet and claim its divine powers. Following the commencement of Project Mekh-Knight, Mekh-Knight of the Morning Star was completed, imbued with the power of the key. While Li was giving it a test run, she took the opportunity to realize her ambitions, directing the key's celestial powers into the planet's core to awaken the Great Darkness. The Great Darkness, through Morningstar, wrought destruction across the world, and the 7 other Mekh-Knights quickly rose to oppose and destroy it. To contain the darkness, the other members of the Crusadian developed physical vessels of their own, the World Legacies, and reprogrammed the Mekh-Knights to erase the remnants of humanity so that the planet can flourish again unimpeded. Meanwhile, Li, who was killed in the Cataclysm, had already uploaded her soul into the World's Chalice, so she may once again attempt to claim the divine powers in the future. Aurum begins to notice the presence of the Great Darkness, and feels that he is being beckoned to it. When he notices that the perpetrator is Ningirsu, he turns to his new companions for help. Together, they unite as the Crusadia, activating the World Crown to awaken to new forms, and advance towards the giant tower in the distance, Orchestrated Babel. There, they are opposed by the Orcust, led by Ningirsu, who is focused on activating the World Wand. Casting aside his doubt, Aurum gathers all his courage to oppose his former friend and avert another disaster. When Ningirsu saw Aurum cradling his sister's lifeless body, he was struck with despair, and his mind filled with a desire to revive Ib at any cost. He struck Aurum unconscious, collected Ib's body, and fled with Aurum's second sword. He proceeded to analyze the Mekk-Knight's cores and Aurum's swords to understand the powers of the world legacies and even maybe find a way to revive Ib. His efforts led him to learn of a number of abandoned facilities scattered across the world, and he sets off to check each one for answers. While most of what he found were unhelpful, Ningirsu eventually reaches a fully functional facility. Ningirsu has learned of all the secrets of the world. Using the ancients' technologies, he tries creating a vessel for Ib's soul. After numerous failures that would be repurposed as his Orcust army, his one successful creation is Galatea the Orcust automaton, and this also revitalizes the sword he stole from Aurum. Now he commences the next step of the plan, to build Orchestrated Babel and use it to create a new world for his resurrected sister. As the Orcust army opposes the Crusadia's advance, Aurum notices that Babel is emanating a power that resembles his key. The mechanical vessels use this to activate Babel, releasing a bright pillar of light aimed at the World Wand. Aurum, realizing that this would threaten the planet, tries to stop its activation but is intercepted by Ningirsu. The two former friends clash, neither gaining any ground over the other. With a resounding crash, the World Wand smashes into the planet's crust, where the world legacy leads. The World Wand crashes into the planet's crust, sending tremendous aftershocks rippling across the planet. To protect his Crusadia companions, Imduk invokes the power of the gods, sacrificing himself to create a barrier to defend them. As Aurum cradles Imduk's lifeless body, the World Ark, which had been activated by the wand, begins absorbing Imduk's power. The merger creates the fearsome two-headed Guardragon Andrake, which then reforms each world legacy into a draconic form. The Guardragons have awoken. Ningirsu is unfazed by the Guardragons and focuses on Ib's revival. He brings Ib's dead body to Galatea and intends to use the remnants of the key's power to enact his plan. Galatea absorbs Ib's body, but the revival goes awry. The remnants of Li's soul had taken over the fusion, transforming Galatea into Orcust Nightmare. Taking the key's power for herself, Li decimates Ib's soul and consumes the Guardragons, growing into the monstrous nightmare incarnation Idli, and then creating an enormous crawler named Deus Ex Crawler. Aurum and his allies notice the giant crawler is connected to the Great Darkness below, but their advance is held up by Imduk, now transformed into World Legacy Guardragon Mardark. The previous clash with the Orcust has left the Crusadia too fatigued to push past Mardark. When all hope seems lost, a glowing dragon, Guardragon Justicia, approaches Idli. With its power, it removes Ib's body from Idli and merges with it, resurrecting her as Ib the World's Chalice Justiciar. Before Aurum or Ningirsu can celebrate their reunion, they have to address Idli, who has lost control of the world legacy and has gone on a rampage. Ib and Aurum call out to Imduk's soul, reawakening the lost dragon as World's Chalice Guardragon Olmarduk. Meanwhile, Deus Ex Crawler finally unearths the true form of the Great Darkness, World Gears of Theological Demiurgy. Ningirsu had intended to use the key to control the powers of the Guardragon to facilitate its revival, but the procedure went awry due to Li's soul hijacking the whole process. As Ningirsu fell into despair, he witnessed Guard-Dragon Justicia bringing his lost sister to life. As Ningirsu collects himself after witnessing the miracle, he hears the final thoughts of Galatea, who had somehow gained a soul of her own. Out of a love for its master, the doll discreetly transferred Ip's soul into the world's chalice and gave itself up to Li. Motivated by the sacrifices that were made for this miracle, Ningirsu clutches Ip's sash and faces the threats with newfound determination. Gazing upon the world gears, Aurum recalls a passage from the legend of the Star Heroes and calls his Crusadia allies to help unite all the world legacies into a single entity. Italy takes notice and moves to stop their efforts, but she in turn was interrupted by Ningirsu, who forges a colossal spear from the remnants of his Orcust army and thrusts it directly at Italy. He then merges with the remnants of his Orcust army and becomes Ningirsu, the Orcust of the Evening Star, and gives his all to protect Ib and the Crusadia. The mad Italy uses Deus Ex Crawler to forcibly bind herself to the world gears, causing it to lose control and wreak even more destruction across the planet. Thanks to Ningirsu buying them enough time, Aurum completes his ascension, transforming into Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avramax. It is now up to the heroes to bring a stop to the Great Darkness. Aurum, using his newfound powers, plunges into the planet's core to access the world gears. In its core, he finds Li in her original human form, and he asks her why she chose to do all this. Li doesn't answer, but Aurum can feel her memories and motives. Her thirst for knowledge and pursuit of truth, all perverted by a lust for divine power. He also learns of Li's nightmarish plan, how she learned of the key in her time, and everything she did to acquire its divine powers, and the destruction she caused so that a true successor can be found. Aurum is appalled at the suffering she wrought, all for the sake of sating her curiosity. Among Li's discoveries is the program of transformation that can be used in accordance with its controller's will. The previous successors to the key who had ascended to godhood eventually lost control of the world gears, creating cycles of destruction and rebirth until the next successor claims the key. Despite not being a successor, Li had planned to use the key and the crawlers to forcibly integrate the divine power into herself. But all this was for naught, as Aurum, backed by the determination of his allies, had truly become the key's successor who can fully control the world gears. As the last of Li's might vanishes, Aurum has to make a quick decision before the world gears lay complete waste to the planet. Cherishing the memories of everyone he had met and lost on his journey, Aurum finally seizes the divine power before him, merging with the world gears to become a Vidya, rebuilder of worlds. His first and last order as the new god: bring back all those lives lost amidst the war over the world legacy, and allow me to end the reign of gods to prevent conflict over divine power from happening ever again. The program starts, and his will is enacted. The world is reborn, along with everyone who was lost in the war over the world legacy. But in choosing to end the vicious cycle of destruction and rebirth, Aurum had inevitably erased himself from this world. Life now blossoms across the reborn planet without a trace of the scars of war. The only remnants of divine power was bestowed to Ib, the World Key. Ib, now reborn as Lib the World Key Blade Master, sets off on a journey with Imduk to seal away the final fragments of the world legacy. Meanwhile, Ningirsu, now reborn as Girsu the Orcust Mekk-Knight, watches over his sister from afar, tasked with protecting Ib and the new world with his companion Galatea at his side. Ib, clutching the world key, watches as its glow leads her across the world to its next destination.